This was too good of a deal to not document it. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. So a couple of weeks ago, the demo shop had an awesome sale, and if you just happened to be there when it dropped, you could get some pretty nice prices. So I decided this SG Custom, I haven't documented this exact version before, and we talk about it all the time in those demo recaps. We might as well see what these things are all about. Because let's face it, the SG Custom has been out since the early 60s, but it's this particular version that came out around 2016-ish as far as the revival of it, in a gorgeous ebony finish with 2 humbuckers, and then you just have all your standard custom appointments up here. But before we talk too much about that, let's just gather my first impressions. This is ridiculously sweet. You've got that 61 style half guard going on, the gold hardware pairing with this ebony finish. Normally, I'm not a big fan of SG Customs, or SGs in general, but there's certain ones that just scream, oh yeah, that's classy and stylish, and this is definitely one of those. When they were first introduced in the early 60s, they looked like this. They were typically all white. I mean, you can find some custom ordered black ones and other fancy finishes like cherry. You'd find some sort of a tremolo arm on them, and they would have 3 pickups. But since a lot of people think 3 pickups get in their way, a lot of times you'll find people would custom order them only with 2, even though then they just kind of look like regular SG standards, but with the fancier fretboard woods and the headstock overlay. That's the biggest difference between an SG standard and an SG custom once you take away all those other fancy appointments. Whereas if you look at it like a Les Paul standard versus a Les Paul custom, the biggest difference comes down to how many ply binding is on the front and back. But you can't necessarily bind an SG, and I say that because you can, but you can no longer get the curves on the side, and then you'd have to have a flat top SG. And yes, they do exist, but in very, very limited quantities, and not necessarily Gibson branded. And the SG is one of Gibson's only models that has never went out of production since it was first introduced. It just changed quite a few different times throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But this style was first rebirthed around 2016 when they launched a whole plethora of new custom stylings. So they had the Les Paul Custom and the SG Custom, which were always there, but then they brought back the Firebird, Explorer, as well as the Flying V Customs. However, most of those were actually introduced in the early 2000s in very limited numbers. Like, for example, you can check out the Flying V Custom episode to learn more about that, but 2016 is when they first kind of rebirthed them. But the biggest thing to know if you're shopping for one of these on the used market is it's not until late 2019 when they start to bring back ebony fretboards. Prior to that, that would be a Richlight one. This one is last year production, 2022, so it will have ebony. We've documented some beautiful custom shop SGs on the show. I really, really love the SG Elegance. We've had the 60th anniversary 61s. I'd say the closest I've documented was the finest Datar in Japan, which was a 68 style custom shop reissue with the 3 pickups. Oh, and don't forget about the Jimi Hendrix signature SG custom. But outside of the custom shop, we had those Captain Kirk Douglas SGs, which I still think are a fantastic deal. But if anybody's selling an SG Flying Eagle, I need to document one of those things too. As far as just a 2 pickup, single color, nothing too crazily fancy outside of the custom appointments, yeah, I don't think I can say I have documented one of these, so it's another one for the documentation books here. But this one coming out of the demo shop means it had a small micro blemish somewhere. And so they'll sell it off at a discount. They give it a new COA instead of the typical one. And it looks like this one actually has a 2018 era Gibson Custom Shop SG case instead of their newer all black Lifton style with the yellow interior. But now that they no longer use these cases, I kind of miss them. Because let me tell you, this case is really light. It was so light, I was scared they shipped this thing out in a gig bag. But nope, it does have the case. So to learn more about this SG Custom, let's go ahead and throw it on the workbench to take a look at its parts and specs. Inside our SG Custom, let's check this out. I'm noticing this ebony is a little bit darker than most ebony finishes. Compare it to the black on the pickguard. You can tell that it's just that much darker. And maybe the gold hardware helps pull that off too, but let's check out our pickups. It's what you would normally find in a Les Paul Custom. It's just your 490R in the neck and the 498T in the bridge. And those readings within the circuit, 13.47 k ohms in the bridge, neck is 7.74, and the middle position, 4.91. It's a solid set of pickups that's been used since the early 90s.
The SG Custom features a long neck tenon. You can see it ends right there, and you actually have to use a tenon cover to cover that over. Otherwise, this is what you would see. Although I wouldn't have blamed you had you not saw the tenon cover, because it does a pretty good job of blending in. But I didn't see anything too fancy in our bridge pickup cavity. These are solid mahogany bodies. There was some sort of like a black writing in the neck pickup cavity, but you really can't read it. The bridge on this model is a regular Gibson Nashville style by Advanced Plating Incorporated, and it is a full weight tailpiece. This was actually listed in the demo shop as fair condition, and honestly, black finishes stock from the Gibson factory, you're going to find all these swirls anyways. But to be fair here, there are a couple of scratches in here that I would say were just a little bit deeper than your typical polishing swirls. It's this one right here by the bridge, I think, but for the most part, a lot of this is very minor. You could buff this back into perfection. And you know what? Maybe that's what makes this look so dark, is it doesn't have the VOS gunk over top of it. Usually when I get a custom shop SG or a high-end Ebony custom shop, it has the VOS, like the Peter Frampton model. So maybe that's why this one looks just so different. And volume, tone, please tell me they messed up the knob locations. I'm gonna have to test. Bridge pickup. Yep, that's the volume. That's the tone. We're good there. Okay, good. They just messed the knobs up. That would have been so confusing. Here's what it looks like if you were to take the pick guard off. It's pretty much still there. But the SG Custom pick guard does have the multi-ply to give it that custom aesthetic. But moving on from our mahogany body, we've got the mahogany neck with the ebony fretboard. 22 medium jumbo frets with a 24 3/4 inch scale length with a 12-inch fretboard radius. All pretty standard stuff here with mother of pearl block inlays. I get a nut width of 1.68 inches, and that increases to 2.06. First fret neck depth, 0.85, then increases to 0.94 by the 12th. Here's that profile at the 1st and 12th fret. It's not a huge neck by any means, but it's good sized for an SG. And unfortunately, I'm calling it now, this is gonna have some serious neck dive. And we've got our regular Gibson custom split diamond inlays up here. And our truss rod is looking perfect. Oddly, no SG custom truss rod cover though, just blank. And on the backside, we don't have too much to talk about, but we'll start with our electronics. I've actually got the higher end custom shop unbranded pots in this particular one, and this is how it's all wired up from the factory. Looks pretty standard to me. And you've got some additional contours on the back to help you create that SG shape, with some more over here. And we've just got our regular strap buttons in our normal locations. And the thing about custom shop SGs is they do get crafted just a little bit differently. Their body actually has a little bit of a shelf that hugs the heel of the neck. You can really see that clearly in my SG Elegant reviews. Moving up the back of the neck, we eventually get to our headstock where you can see it is marked a demo, which has been a long time since I've documented a demo guitar. Usually it's mod stuff, but our serial number dates it to 2022. And all said and done, this one is 6 pounds, 5.5 ounces. So let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear what an SG Custom in this configuration sounds like. Yep, that's what I thought. It's got some extreme neck dive going on here. Now, how can you fix that? Some guys move the strap button from back here to the upper horn, Tony Iommi style. Other times, you can actually find specialty-made back plates that are heavier than normal, or you could just put some fishing weights in there. Or you could just get an extra gripping strap.
quite interesting out of this. It really gives me alternative rock type vibe. You know, where they start using really dissonant sounds like these? But it does the rock stuff good too. Now that we know all about Gibson's latest iteration of the SG Custom, what are my final thoughts on this thing? I ended up actually liking this guitar quite a bit, more so for heavier rock or alternative sounds, but I mean, you could really use this for just about anything. But I will say, I have a newfound appreciation of this ebony finish with the gold hardware to only 2 pickups on an SG Custom. This is one ridiculously sleek looking guitar. Now it's got the whole neck divey issue, and I'm sure you could find one that has a heavier body that might balance a little bit better, but you can also do the other things that we were talking about. So if anything else, we finally have a video I can point you to when we talk about these modern day SG Customs. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.